Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I have a very fun video today. It is going to be all about books. So I'm in a new location because this is going to be my book nook, my book corner where I talk all things literature. So I wanted to start this off with one of my very favorite genres. Not kids books, good guess though. It's urban fantasy or contemporary fantasy, depending on what you look up. And I had this idea because I was kind of hankering for a new first book, a new series, and I read all of the Laurel K. Hamiltons and I was kind of feeling a little bit something in the fantasy realm. I was browsing Book Bobble. I think that's what it's referred to. If I'm wrong, I'll put it in the description box below, but it's essentially a website that pulls together all of the $2.99 and under books from all of the websites across the internet. Amazon, Nook, Google Play, anywhere you can buy books. They kind of pull all of those $2.99 and under, like really great prices for books, and make a list so that you can purchase them on whatever platform that you have. But I was browsing and I came across a couple of books that were the first in a series. And I was like, well, I don't know if I want to dive headfirst into a series. What if I like the first book? What if I hate the first book? What if I like the first book more than the second book? This sometimes happens to me where I really like a first book and then the second book falls flat, or it's just really repetitive, especially in this genre. So I decided to take the first book in a couple of series that I had never read before and do a versus, like a book versus book versus book. Is it worth it to spend that $2 when you're going to have to spend $8, $9, $10 on the next few books? That's where they catch you. It's kind of like take a nibble, but if you want the whole pie, you're gonna have to give us your left arm. Is that an analogy? Did that make sense? My point is are these $2 books worth it when their second, third, fourth books are so much more expensive? So I thought I would help you guys out and do the work for you. 3 books that I am pitting against each other today. I knew nothing about them. I didn't read any reviews. I didn't search for the best books in urban fantasy series. I just picked books that the very first book in the series was on sale or inexpensive. So the first book is Rosemary and Rue. It's the October Day series, and I really enjoyed this book. I was really surprised because I kind of thought I wasn't going to like it as much. I had high hopes going into this book, specifically because even though I didn't do any research, I did read the synopsis, and one of the first things that you see above the synopsis is typically a short one sentence, "This book is amazing," by somebody, Washington Post or another author or something in that realm. And the blurb for this book was from Felicia Day. And she is such a big part of the nerd girl geek fantasy genre of life that you really kind of take what she says and to heart. She's a WoW player. She does the guild. You know, she's really interested in fantasy, so you know she says something's good, it's probably going to be good. And she was right. It's good. It was a good book. I loved the initial concept. October Day is a private investigator, and she works under a ruler of one of the factions of the fairy world. And his wife and daughter had been kidnapped. And so she suspected his kind of evil twin brother, and she went off to confront said evil twin brother. And he is a very powerful fae. He is a pureblood fae, where she is not a pureblood fae. And he was cohorting with somebody who was kind of evil, also a pureblood fae. And he busted her tracking him, and he turned her into a koi fish and locked her, like he turned her into a fish and put her into a koi pond. She was a koi fish, and she was trapped there for 14 years of her life. So 14 years go by, everybody thinks she's dead, everybody thinks that, you know, she just disappeared. Her husband is human, her daughter is like a fourth blood, which they don't really have any sort of significance, they don't really have any power. For 14 years, they think that she's just ran out on them. And she I won't spoil anything. I won't tell you how she gets out of the koi pond, but she's freed from the koi pond, and she has to like regain her life and restart her life. And I just think that initial concept is so interesting. I've never really read a story that kind of started out like that, and I was immediately hooked. And it was from the get-go about this world, and the story was about October and coming back into the real world after being gone for 14 years and kind of relearning things and re-understanding herself and her place in the world and kind of just figuring things out. And then of course something terrible happens where her good friend needs her. I won't say any more than that because I definitely want you to read this book. Her good friend needs her, and she has to kind of put on her private investigator pants again. She really doesn't want to, but she has to save herself and save her life and save the life of a bunch of people who've really been there for her over the, before she was a fish, before she got turned into a fish, and after she got turned into a fish. I really enjoyed this storyline because though there are romantic entanglements, they are not the primary focus of this book. The primary focus is obviously what she's investigating, and I obviously really enjoy that because I don't really enjoy when a romantic relationship is just shoved down your throat. That's not my thing. If you like a romance to be the primary focus of your stories, there are some other books that do that and do that very well. They're just not my cup of tea. I don't like triangles. I don't I'm not a fan of that sort of thing. And I also thought that October Day's background from before she was a fish and before she kind of became a private investigator, her youth is brought up in this story, and I thought it was so interesting because it's so dark. It's like really dark, and I did not expect this book to go to such a dark place, but it's also such a relatable dark, even though it's magic and mysticism in the fairy world. It was just really well written and rich with background, and all of the characters were super dynamic, and I really enjoyed this read. Oh, and the other thing that I really enjoyed about this is I was actually quite surprised by the ending, which doesn't normally happen. Typically, authors really lay it out for you. They kind of make you feel smarter than everybody else. Then they make you feel smarter than the characters in the book. And sometimes, even if they aren't trying to do that, you can kind of figure it out by context clues. I'm pretty good at that. But this was really a surprise for me. And I pleasantly enjoyed being surprised by how the story unfolded and the ending of this book. So it really closed a lot of storylines and explained things, and it made it feel like a solid standalone book, which I really appreciate because I don't enjoy when I feel like I bought a book but I didn't finish a book. Like I have to read 2 or 3 books to really finish the story. And though that can be nice, I personally don't like that very much. I like for my book to be a book that I don't have to, like, I can process, and I can take a minute and be like, wow, that was good. There are some strings obviously that didn't get knotted and tied, and so there's certain I's that didn't get dotted and certain T's that didn't get crossed, but not so much so that I felt like this was incomplete. I really like for my books to be complete stories. This book really gave it to me, and you can probably tell I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this so much, and it was such a good first book of a series. So the next book that I want to talk about is on sale. I think it was under $3. I'm not positive, but it was called Priceless, and it's by Shannon Mayer. And this was also in the realm of urban fantasy. This is about a woman her name is Riley, and she's a tracker. So she can pinpoint a person, she can pinpoint their location, and she gets drawn to them if she focuses on them. And I thought that was really cool. So she's a tracker, and she goes and finds missing children. And this concept to me is the only reason I've continued to read this book. The concept is so interesting. So what happened to Riley is when she was younger, her younger sister, while they were at the park playing, disappeared. And Riley was about 15 or 16 at the time, and she got blamed for the disappearance. And there's an FBI agent who believes that she's responsible for her sister's death and disappearance. Her family kick her out, and she kind of is on her own. Well, it isn't until her sister gets kidnapped that she comes into her power and realizes that, you know, she has this ability to track people. And being so young and unprepared and really untrained, she can't do anything to help her sister, so she takes all of that kind of guilt and resentment and focuses it on finding children who are lost, children who are missing, children who the police or the FBI cannot find because they've been taken by otherworldly beings. When it comes to evil, children are really highly sought after, and so when children disappear and nobody can find them, and they definitely have been kidnapped by something otherworldly or something of Riley's nature, like a sorcerer or a demon. I'm not entirely sure what this world has inside of it, but like there are harpies so far, werewolves, vampires, etc. And she finds them, she tracks them down, she finds them, and she brings them home. Sometimes alive, sometimes not, which I think is just so fascinating. So the one thing I will say about the story is the writing is a little clunky. If you can get over that, reading this is going to be very entertaining for you. So I know some people are very particular about their books. I can look past it. At first I was a bit like, this is a little uncomfortable, but as I was reading I got kind of used to it and I was okay with it. But the writing is really clunky. I really think this book could have taken to another edit or two. Just like a really solid edit and really solid, like kind of flourishing a little bit. But apart from that, it's by a Canadian author. It's really well written. It's a good story. It's an interesting concept. The only thing I didn't like about this book is the romance between Riley and the Agent O'Shea, who's been hunting her since she was 16 years old for the murder of her sister, comes out of nowhere. And spoiler, there's a romance, and it's between Riley and the agent. And it's just really awkward, and it's within the first couple of pages that it kind of starts, and you'll notice like immediately, so it's not too much of a spoiler, but it's really clunky and awkward, and then it gets really intense, and then it becomes the story's entire focus. And it took this really good concept to keep me from kind of putting this book away. So the concept is so good that I want to continue reading, but this is one of those series that once you finish the first book, you almost immediately have to pick up the second book because there's so many loose ends that don't get tied up, which I'm not a fan of. As you know, I talked about it with the first book, but I feel like I want to give this story and this concept a little bit of a chance and give this author a chance to kind of really bring me around and see if there's anything more to this that is just as fascinating as this concept is. So I was willing to give this book a chance. There are a lot of things about it I really liked. I really liked Alex, the werepuppy, which you'll get to know in the story. He's fascinating and sweet, and Riley seems to take in lost souls, lost children in a sense, and her seeking lost children and then lost children being drawn to her. I really like that aspect of this story. I also actually really like Riley. She's very focused on finding these lost kids, and as much as the story kind of revolves around this romance that's really kind of weird and awkward, the moments that which she's like pinpoint focused and really intense, she is amazing, and you're just like, yes, I love you. But then come these moments where she's awkwardly thinking about Agent O'Shea, and moments where you're like, girl, what are you doing? You're gonna die. Like, it's just really strange that the author seems to think we're gonna forget that they're interested in each other, which is impossible. But then there are also these really subtle, sweet things that happen where Riley needs to be grounded, and she needs something solid to kind of hold on to help her survive, and she like reaches out her tracking to Agent O'Shea to help keep her grounded. She feels his feelings and she feels his emotions, and I feel like that subtlety is what this book really needs. It needs more of that subtlety and less of the overt sexualness, overt sexual tension, because that stuff's really sweet. Her needing something to ground her and needing something to hang on to so she can run and fight and get through this giant struggle she's going through, and she reaches out for him. And I think that is what this story should have, the kind of romance the story should have in it, because both of them seem too guarded to really be so overtly like sexually into each other. It's like, it's really strange, because I feel like for Riley, if she were to stop and think about it, she'd be like, why do I reach out for O'Shea? What does that mean for me? But she doesn't stop and think about it. She just does it. It's just like instinctual for her to be like solid ground and reach for him, and that's lovely, and I loved that. And I wanted the romantic parts of the story to be more subtle like that, more little things like that, than this overt like, I need to fuck him kind of thing. I really want to give the rest of the series a chance, because like I said, there's a lot of loose ends, a lot of T's that don't get crossed, a lot of I's that don't get dotted. I want to pick up the second book. I think that for me, I would pick up the second book, but for this series, I think there are others out there that are better, more well written, that have just as interesting storylines and just as interesting concepts that might grip you a little bit more. However, if you are into that romance and that sexual tension in your story as being like kind of, it's not the primary focus, but it's definitely holds a candle to the actual plot of the story, then you'll enjoy this book, and I suggest picking it up. It's under, I think, like $3 and a really good deal. But if story and plot are more important to you and you're more interested in a polished, well-written book, then I would say pass on Priceless. I'm gonna pick up the second book. I'm gonna give it a chance. I'm gonna dive a little bit deeper into the lore and see if, you know, where I come out at the end. I just wanted to sit in my little book corner and share with you the 2 books that I read versus Rosemary and Rue versus Priceless, and the winner is knockout Rosemary and Rue. I can't gush about Rosemary and Rue enough. I love Toby. I love her. She's such a fascinating character, and I fully intend to read the second book. I'd love to hear your book suggestions and suggestions from you guys. So please feel free to leave a comment down below. Leave your thoughts on the books that I talked about here if you've read them, or, you know, say whatever you want to. Just say hi. It's always fun sitting here talking to you guys. I've really enjoyed this, and I've missed this. So thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time. Bye. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing this Rosie Found Everyday look. If you want to see how I got this, just keep watching.